Hey, if you like this reaction, give me a like. If you would like to see more content, subscribe, click the little bell, and you'll get continued content. Hello, this is Venus Brown. Today I will be doing a review and discussion of Season 1, Episode 5 of House of the Dragon. I'm going to start off right from the very beginning and be very honest. I really did not like this episode. I thought there was way too much from it appears they tried to shove into one episode. It also seems like there are several characters that are going to be very important to the storyline coming up where we do not have a lot of information about the people involved. Their characters have not been built up very much. The only thing we know is surface information that doesn't really get down deep enough into what kind of person, what kind of character they really are. And that really bothers me because we've been plunged into storylines that are important in this episode and will be very important later in the series. And the showrunners have done very little of their homework in actually building up these characters so that we understand them sufficiently to understand this episode. This episode was okay at the beginning and in the middle, but that ending piece, the wedding ceremony, the fight, the chaos, all of that was very chaotic. It was all very shoved into one scene, and to me it really took a lot away from that episode. Now at the beginning we get to meet Daemon's wife finally, and only for a short time because they basically brought her on in order to kill her off. The only thing that we knew about Daemon's wife was the little bits and pieces that we learned from Daemon and the way he talked about the people of the place that she came from. And that description that he gave was not applicable to his wife as far as I could tell. We knew a title and a name, where she came from, what her family was, who her family was. One small description of her people that's not necessarily accurate, and nothing else. And then her to be just introduced to kill her off. Very frustrating. Then we see a ship going to Driftmark in order to propose what looks like a very quickie marriage. And that may not necessarily be so, but you have them propose the marriage behind closed doors, might I add, without including the bride or groom to be, so that the adults can talk, I guess, since the parents are the ones that arrange these things. You're completely excluding the people that are getting married, which is frustrating, but I know that's kind of a sign of that period, and that's just the way things were. Like, you have this whole proposal, the trip back to the castle, and then the marriage all in one episode, which to me really shouldn't have been done unless this is supposed to be a really super quick thing. And I don't think that that should have been the case. I don't think there was a reason to do it that way other than the showrunners want to fit as much as they can into this episode when they could have fit little bits and pieces into previous episodes instead of trying to shove all of this in at once. I'm going to talk a little bit about the relationship between Queen Alicent and her father, Otto Hightower, but I don't want to spend too much time on it because I have talked about it in other videos. What the show has been giving us is that Queen Alicent starts out as an innocent girl who is being pushed forward into really awkward positions that she never really should have been put into by her father. And this happens repeatedly. there is this reality that he was doing this from before when he did it with King Jaehaerys. And for that reason, you feel like a certain amount of sympathy, I think, for Alicent. That a lot of what is going on in her life, in the positions that she's been put in the reality of her having Aegon and trying to push him off as heir, and the friction that seems to exist between multiple characters in the show, a lot of it seems to be coming from Otto Hightower. And because this is her father, I think that creates a certain kind of situation for her where there is this real power imbalance, and daddy keeps putting her into these situations, and she is used to that. She knows that this is how it is for her, and she probably has gained a certain amount of perspective that this is the way things are, that this is normal. And for her, it may feel normal because she's in the middle of it, because she doesn't have that window on the outside looking in to see that what daddy's doing, even for that time period, is a bit overhanded. That what daddy's doing is maybe not what's best for you, and that what daddy is doing is intentionally intended all for him, to build him up, to build his family line up, to build his legacy without real regard to her welfare. And she's going to, of course, still think of her dad as her dad, her father, and love her father. For us looking in from the outside, it just looks really bad. And I think for some of us, we acknowledge that this is a period where many things were done that were not necessarily in the interest of the child, that were in the interest of the father, in the interest of the family line, and so we may excuse a lot of it. I just don't want to excuse this stuff. I feel like it is being done enough, often enough, and heavy-handedly enough that even in that period, even though things like that did happen, it's still a line too far for that father to be putting his daughter in those situations. At least to me, that's just how I feel. You can feel however you want, but that's how I feel. And either way, her feelings up to this point have been built by Otto Hightower, and I suspect that the situation in this episode and the previous episode with her father, who has been putting her in these awkward positions, but she still loves and still cares about and is still loyal to, that is going to push her into the direction that we do see in the books, very much against Rhaenyra. And I think most of us can figure that out. It's just that trying to figure out that bridge of how she comes from where she was to that position that she takes later on is something that I really wanted to fill out, and I feel like that's what this is doing. Shifting her to a position where she's going to take a very different stance than what she has before, and it feels like this episode is a major shift in that direction. One of the major themes that we see in this episode, you have this gossip that goes on amongst the people of the kingdom, and that spreads more gossip amongst the royal courts. With the wedding ceremony, we see a lot of that going on, and it really reminds me a lot of Versailles. A lot of the stuff that I think made the Sun King feel like there were people that were going to take him down, coming at him from every side, and he didn't know who to trust. It really reminded me of that scenario, both in the show Versailles and the historical stories that we may have heard about Versailles. This gossiping is going on throughout the episode. First, we see Alicent and her father. And so that, I think, starts some of it. And I do wonder if a lot of things weren't happening behind the scenes to cause the massive amount of chaos that happened in the last scenes. I wonder if a lot of that wasn't started by Otto Hightower. But then I think that he got into her head. He really got into her head with the things that he said to really scare her. And I suspect that some of the things going on this behind the scenes were because of her, were at her hands, that she was meddling. Because we did hear later on one of those lords that came to the wedding talking to her, telling her that she's doing the right thing, which really seems like foreshadowing for some big event. And what if that was part of it? What if that was part of what happened in that wedding scene? And after that, we see Alicent talking to, I think it's Lord Strong, the the one with clubfoot who walks with a cane. Okay, and he's spreading rumors. He's spreading rumors and gossip. What he did was definitely intentional, or being unwell because he heard that she had gotten some tea from from the High Septon. Like, I'm sorry, even then, tea being given to a princess in the middle of the night could be a variety of things. She could be having a hard time getting to sleep. She could be getting to sleep and having nightmares. She could be ill. She could be injured. There could be any number of things. And yes, she could be pregnant. But what he did was definitely intentional spreading of gossip. Spreading of gossip that sounds like it was intentionally placed there in order to cause dissent. In a completely different storyline, the stuff going on with Damon and his wife, he got her to have an accident and then eventually he killed her, but it looked like at first like he was gonna let her go until she opened her mouth. I think just because of the situation that left for Damon, having no heirs, and you know that means that her inheritance is supposed to be given to him. So there was some of that, but I feel like it was really a side point to the rest of what was going on in that wedding scene. And then the other gossip that we get is Sir Criston Cole. He's not really spreading the gossip. It's more like the gossip is about him. When Queen Alicent sends for him, asking him about Rhaenyra's night out with Daemon, but he doesn't know that. And she doesn't know about him, but then he does go ahead and before things get too carried away, he does acknowledge that he did something with Rhaenyra. So he gets his side out. He doesn't ever find out about what Alicent was actually bringing him in there for, because that, of course, shifts what she's hearing and shifts her perspective on the entire thing. I just really thought that after she found out that Rhaenyra did have sex with Sir Criston Cole, I thought she would go and talk to Rhaenyra. Confront her? Sure. Have a big fight and argument with her? Sure. But talk to her before she goes and does or says anything to anybody else about the whole thing. But it seems instead like somehow that shifted her perspective enough to make her decide okay, I'm done with this and I'm going to start putting things in motion to screw Princess Rhaenyra over. So that's what it looked like. But the end of the episode was a chaotic mess, so it was really hard to say exactly what the hell was going on. And like I said, there were so many storylines all squeezed into this one episode that it made it very confusing. It made it really hard to figure out what on earth really was happening. And it makes it so you have to grasp at a lot of straws for what actually was happening behind the scenes that we don't know about. Definitely once the wedding ceremony started, you could see that there were multiple people that seemed to be aware of what was going on, of little bits and pieces. And it was enough that I don't think any amount of trying to tamp down the rumors would have kept them from getting out to everybody and causing chaos. I just did not expect that much chaos to be happening right then and there. But I think part of what they did with that with that wedding ceremony is to present another, I think, two or three storylines that happened in the book that they wanted to just shove right into that one event, the wedding ceremony. And in the book, that's not how it goes. I will address the differences between the book and the show. Is that what it seems that they've done so far is change little things here and there. So even though there are multiple storylines that you could go along on in the book, and there are many gaps in the book that could be filled in with just about anything, there are still clear storylines here and there that they have broken from. But I think what they've done is picked things that don't alter the important storylines very much. They don't alter them enough to change the story, really. It's more like maybe different people are going to do certain things. Maybe those things are going to happen at different times. Or maybe those things are going to happen in a different place, but it's not enough to change the ultimate arc of the story. So that's as much as I'm going to say about it, and that is a lot of what seems to have happened in this episode. Different people getting put into storylines that in the episode than what were in the book. A bunch of things happening during this wedding ceremony that were actually supposed to happen in other events. Points in history, I think that in the book happened in different points in history, but they were like all converged into this one period here in the episode. So I found it frustrating and I found it confusing. And because I have read the book, it definitely alters how I feel about the show. But even if I hadn't ever read the book, even if I had never read the book or watched any of Game of Thrones, and I was just watching this show and nothing else, this episode would have still been a very confusing clusterfuck of information that would have frustrated me and made me very upset. So that's the reality. And before I go on to the next point, I forgot one other person that was a big part of this rumor mill, and that was Laenor's boyfriend. I can't remember his name right now, but he definitely seemed to be a big part of it. And I don't know if it was intentional or he was feeling fear and anxiety knowing that the princess was getting married to his boyfriend. Maybe not feeling confident enough in Laenor telling him, look, we've got this agreement. Me and Rhaenyra made this agreement that I can keep you as my little side piece while she's allowed to have her little side piece. So that didn't seem to make him confident enough that he was safe, that their relationship was safe. So maybe that was part of what was going on there. I can't say for sure. You can't put your own head into somebody else's feelings and perspectives on something like that. That's their story, that's their perspective, that's their situation, and he's going to feel his own way about it. But then I also wonder, has he been getting fed information from people on the side of, we want Queen Alicent's child to be the heir to the throne? Is that what's happening? The big whisper campaign, it seems like, was a major part of this episode that probably caused whatever that chaotic clusterfuck was that happened in the wedding scene, where that huge fight broke out and somebody got freaking killed because of it. The reality that Sir Criston Cole did the killing, that's part of what really bugged me. Like, what the hell happened that we didn't see, that we don't know about, that caused him to get so infuriated that he bludgeoned a guy so badly that he caved his entire face in and killed him? Because to me, that was ridiculous given what we do know. Because Sir Criston Cole, yes, he seemed to be on shaky ground, and he seemed to be feeling a certain kind of way about the fact that he did break his oath, about this moral question. Even that, in somebody like Sir Criston Cole, of what we know of Sir Criston Cole, shouldn't have caused him to go all out like that. Even being on really shaky ground and really having these moral questions about whether you are a decent person and whether your name, your good name, and your honor can ever be restored. Like, it shouldn't have gone that far from what we saw. So, what the heck went on? And I already talked a little bit about the hastiness of the marriage proposal, the closed door talk to Corlys about Laenor and Rhaenyra marrying, but I didn't really address like the questions that were asked in that meeting. And so Corlys wanted to know that the succession would include his family name actually being able to be sustained. And Viserys wanted to ensure that his family name wasn't going to be excluded from that royal line. So they made this compromise that the children would have the father's name, but that the when the time comes and Rhaenyra takes the throne, that Targaryen name is maintained. So, and I think we see some, not something exactly like this, but it's basically, okay, you're going to take this specific name as your royal position name. And when people in royal positions end up ascending to the throne, sometimes their name changes, although I think it's more like their first name changes, not their last name. But hey, it's a fictional show, so we can go whatever kind of direction we want, really, with something like this, and it still sticks close enough to what we see in history that I think I can accept it as a an ulterior path. The the woman becomes queen, and the woman keeps her father's name while she's queen instead of taking her husband's name, which would be perfectly okay in this day and age, in this period. but would probably not be okay way back in the day. So I do think that, not that it would have done any good, since this whole thing seemed to happen very quick and in a hurry, and there was not enough time to make anything substantial really happen outside of this marriage. But I think part of the discussion should have been not just my line of succession and whose family name is going to be sustained and all of that. Really address the obvious tension and division that is occurring within the kingdom between the idea of having a male heir versus having Queen Rhaenyra as heir. Like, that should have been addressed. Corlys has a certain kind of Corlys has a certain kind of perspective, which is very understandable for the period that he is in, for the way things are in the place and period that he is in. And Viserys has his own perspective, because this is his family and he has this idea of how things should go, and he also has these visions that he believes everything needs to be a certain way for the remainder of history until certain things happen, so that the Targaryen family must always be on the throne. So I think that's part of it, but I think Viserys also has this perspective that he already made a decision about who the heir is and that it shouldn't be a question. And Viserys seems to be of the mindset that once I address an issue and it is handled, we shouldn't be dealing with it anymore. He wants things to be nice and pretty and tied up in a little bow, and he wants to act like nothing else is going to happen once that's taken care of. He wants things to be peaceful, wants to avoid war, but he doesn't want to address all the issues that are happening under the surface. Not even under the surface. This stuff is happening right in front of his face, but he doesn't want to address it because he feels like he already addressed it, and he just wants to have this nice, even situation where his reign was all hunky-dory. But he wants to be blind to all the rest of the stuff that's happening, which to me is a major reason that all of this stuff happened. He caused it. He caused it because he refused to address all the simmering problems that were occurring right in front of his face and all throughout the kingdom, and not address them. Another major thing that we see in this episode, that we've seen in other episodes, is that the king is not well. But in this episode, he looks particularly unwell. I said in my reaction, he was looking very gray. Looking very gray, looking very ill. People are asking him, "Are you okay? How are you doing?" And he's just straight up lying. "Oh yeah, I'm okay. I'm fine. Things are good." Like, seriously? You are obviously not fine. While there may be some benefit to kind of hiding your health conditions to your people at certain times, it doesn't do any good to blatantly lie when you are obviously unwell. Like, to me, that's just stupid. And of course, at the end, it definitely shows just how unwell he really was when he collapses in the middle of all that chaotic nonsense that was happening. One of the things there that I kind of wanted to discuss a little bit more is some of the perspectives when it comes to the divisions that are occurring within the kingdom. The divisions all specifically related to Rhaenyra becoming queen or Aegon being switched to heir. Those divisions are real, but you can see throughout the show that different people in the kingdom have different perspectives on this. And people like Otto Hightower can say all they want, that the whole kingdom would be against this. They would they would never approve of it. It would definitely result in a war. But you can see that there are people in the kingdom that don't necessarily agree with that. And I would say that King Jaehaerys addressed problems just as bad. And he did a good job at getting that information out to the kingdom, at trying to really set things up so that even those things that were really, 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 really hard for some people in the kingdom to accept, he got it so that they were accepting enough to deal with it, to put up with it. And the people that were not accepting enough to deal with it were few enough that it wasn't an absolute major problem that caused an outright war. He was able to reign for several decades this way, doing things that the Westerosi people would never have approved of before him, because he was coordinating it, because he was making it happen, because he had the right connections, because he had the right mentality, and because he was doing the right things. And I really do feel like if Viserys had been that way, but he wasn't, but if he had been that way, he might have been able to avoid some of the tension and some of the dissension that was going on. And if he could have avoided it for, I think it was almost a decade that Rhaenyra was heir to the throne, that may have made a softer ground and a more stable ground for her to actually reach ascension when the time comes. But he didn't do what needed to be done, and so there's so much dissension that it's going to cause a war. Things could have been done to make things easier. There may still have been a war, but a outright full-blown war would have been less likely. There definitely would have been dissension that could have been kept under control a little bit more. But we won't know, because this show had the king that they were given. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Sir Criston Cole. I talked a little bit about his moral dilemmas and how I think that those may have been involved with the chaotic mess that occurred at the end. But I want to talk a little bit about what he said on the ship on the way back from Driftmark to Rhaenyra, when he proposed that they leave, take off, and go to his homeland where he would be free to marry her and she could let go of her inheritance and all of this. And especially with all of the challenges that she has expressed in her inheritance, in her need to do her duty and all of that. And I felt like he got the wrong idea. Yes, she complains day and night about her inheritance, and she complains day and night about her duties. But a lot of her complaints, to me, are rooted in her sex. It is, in fact, her sex that makes a lot of the stuff that she complains about a problem. So she's considered heir to the throne, but everybody tells her she has to be married to the right person, that she has to be forced into a marriage, that the marriage is the contract because of her inheritance. In order to solidify her inheritance, in order for people to take her seriously. And almost all of that is because she is female. The fact that Rhaenys never even got the chance to be heir to the throne because of her sex. People in her position are expected to pump out babies so that they can make more heirs to the throne. And those heirs can only be males. Like, that to me is the problem. That to me is what she has a problem with, not the fact that she's heir to the throne. The fact that she's heir to the throne, but because of her sex, she is not taken seriously. She's expected to have another man with her in order to be taken seriously at all. And she is constantly under threat of any male that is in her family line. They can take her inheritance, and they're more likely to be taken seriously. The fact that honestly her life is under threat because of those situations. There is this threat of the kingdom breaking out in war because she is the heir to the throne and she is a female. That's where the problem is, and I really feel like Sir Krista Cole missed the mark on that one and made this assumption that her problem was with the inheritance and the duty and having to do these things she didn't want to do, but that he didn't seem to connect that it all is related to the challenges she experiences because of the way people of her sex and gender are treated. And that's sad, but it's the reality. When she turned him down, I'm sure that that really hurt him, and you can see he's struggling with this moral dilemma. He broke his oath by having sex with her, and you can see that it's eating at him, which is why he came right out and told the queen what he did when she started confronting him, even though she was actually trying to confront him about Daemon. And then Laenor's boyfriend in the wedding ceremony lets him know that he knows that he's got a thing for Rhaenyra, that they've been doing things, and that, hey, you keep my secret about me and Laenor safe, then your secret about you and Rhaenyra will be safe. And he does not take that well at all. I just don't see that how he took that would go so far as him bludgeoning the guy to death. So, what the heck else happened? Because we're talking about somebody who is a trained Kingsguard, who's good at his job. We're talking about somebody who's been at war, who's known for being a good fighter, for being brave, for having honor, for all of this stuff. And we're going to say that he is so weak in the stomach that when he's confronted about his relationship with the princess, he's going to go all hog wild murdering the guy. I don't buy that. I don't buy it at all. I definitely feel like the showrunners have a lot to explain to us about what happened in this episode, and I suspect they will try to explain some of that in the next episode. I just don't know if they're going to give me enough information to be okay with this disaster. This whole episode was a disaster. It was awful. I guess the last thing I'm going to talk about is the wedding itself. We see Daemon's dragon and one of the other dragons, which I wasn't exactly sure which dragon it was, so y'all can tell me. But those two dragons flying over there. And then we see the procession of people coming in for the wedding. We see Sir Gerald Royce. I think that's really all about the whole situation with Lady Royce getting killed. Strongly suspects it's Daemon. Her whole inheritance is wrapped up in their marriage, and because they had no living heir other than him, that means the inheritance goes to him. Definitely confront him, but get some real hard evidence in place before you do it. Unless you have that evidence all together, maybe wait until the end. You're going to call attention to yourself. You're also going to get this argument that Daemon is now her heir. Your claim is automatically going to be questioned, even though we know what kind of person Daemon is, and the king knows what kind of person Daemon is. He's still in that royal line, and you're still going to be expected to have some evidence to make a claim like that. So I really thought that was not a smart idea. We'll move on from Gerald Royce and on to the entrance of the Valerians. They come in like all together, like just this whole image of pomp and circumstance, which I thought was kind of cool. I think it's important people know how important the Valerians were. We don't see them in Game of Thrones, I believe. It's nice to see them represented here. They are an important family in Westeros, at least at that point. The family's all here, ready for this great wedding, which is supposed to strengthen the kingdom. And then we have Daemon enter, and that sends complete quietness throughout the entire room, because nobody knows what is he gonna do, what kind of crap is he gonna pull, and is he gonna ruin this whole wedding for Viserys and for everybody that's there. There's lots of tension in the air, and it's very awkward, and everybody is worried, and there is like massive anxiety going throughout the room, but nothing really happens. He sits down, he takes his place, and they move on with the ceremony. Right as the king is getting ready to discuss how this is going to join the two houses and make things better and stronger and all of that throughout the kingdom, then he is disrupted with his wife entering, which I think he should have waited for his wife in the first place, but maybe he felt like he really needed to get things going and that he could do this without his wife being there. His important speech gets completely disrupted by the queen walking in, and she looks like she's gonna pull something out in the open, and that's not what it looks like. I suspect she definitely was trying to make things go so that Rhaenyra would not be queen, so that she could get people on her side and on the side of her son becoming heir, because daddy got her scared and because she's still very loyal to daddy. Oh my God. Like, Kristen Cole literally beat the shit out of this guy so much that it caved his face in completely. Like, half his face was gone. What happened that was so bad that it caused Kristen Cole to get that friggin' messed up? And yeah, I know, at the end, it shows him getting ready to commit suicide because he's sullied his honor so frigging badly, he can't live with himself. And then Queen Alicent shows up and stops him just in time. I think most of us know where that's going. I hope that they do let us know. Let us know exactly what happened for him to go off the deep end like that. From the information we were given, it didn't make sense. I feel like there's got to be more. If they do give us the information so that we know what it was, that will at least fill in a gap that was left in the book where nobody knows what it was that caused this big rift between Sir Kristen Cole and Rhaenyra. I feel like whatever that was, that's what caused the rift. What was it? I probably shouldn't try to fill in so many blanks between the show and the book, but I can't help it. It's just kind of how I am. If you enjoyed this, even though I am long-winded and I go off in left field sometimes, press the like button. If you want to see more content, click subscribe. You can click the little bell. If you click all on it, it will give notifications whenever I publish something new. I'll see you next episode, and I'll see you whenever I get my discussion. Bye.